Hello and welcome to round 2, part 4, where Ethan's picked The Graduate. Ethan, can you sell this film to us? Can you summarise it quickly before we go into our proper reviewing debate?
Yeah, of course. So The Graduate is
shit.
Go ahead. You've been sitting on that all day.
There was a bit of a spur at the moment. Sometimes.
So, The Graduate is essentially a film about a young man who's just finished school, and he's at a point in his life where he's quite confused. He doesn't really know what he wants to do with it, and he ends up getting into a relationship with an older lady called Mrs. Robinson, and we find out quite early on that she's already married, of course, with a name like Mrs. Robinson, evidently. They end up having
What does that mean?
And then, what does what mean? What I just said?
Yeah, married because she has a name like Mrs. Robinson.
The Mrs. part of it.
Oh,
she's
yeah.
married.
I thought you were just like Robinson is like a female.
You've not seen Meet the Robinsons, Tony. The prequel.
Alright, fair enough.
Everyone called Robinson is married,
Do you think
you
there'd be a
know.
way to tie Meet the Robinsons and The Graduate together somehow?
I used to rewatch Meet the Robinsons.
Yeah.
Is that part of like the Meet the Fockers?
The cinematic universe.
Meet the Gromlins.
Yeah, what the fuck? I was gonna say Meet the Crew. So
Back to The Graduate.
And yeah, as the film goes on, God, I apologise about my voice. I do end up sounding a bit like Lawrence with this husky voice, but I'll keep going anyway. Yeah, and at some point, the main character Ben ends up falling in love with Miss Robinson's daughter, who's called Elaine.
Miss Robinson?
No, Mrs. Robinson. She's married because she's got a name like Mrs. Robinson. And that's essentially it, pretty much, basically summed up.
yeah,
Would you like to hear why I really like this film?
sure.
Go for it.
So tell us why you picked it. Why you thought it would blow our socks off.
No, it's about picking Ethan's favourite films and on the top.
I mean,
250.
isn't it about winning though? Like, isn't it?
I'll try winning, that's a good trick. No.
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea. Originally, I wanted to
Yeah.
pick films that I thought all three of you would like as well as me, but then Harry was like, I'm just picking my favourite films, so I thought maybe I'd do that as well. But I was a bit, surprised because I knew Harry would like it because we have very similar tastes, and I thought Johnny would because it's his kind of film. So I was always on the fence about because he doesn't like the things that I do, like most of the time.
I hate scenes.
Scenes.
Does it have a villain in it? I don't fucking know.
Yeah, I mean it does though. Mrs. Robinson's definitely the villain of the film, don't you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what I like this film? Okay, so there's a lot of things about it. I guess I could kick off with the music. I've always really liked Simon and Garfunkel quite a lot, and I think their music really resonates with the story and the themes and the tone of it very well from the beginning as well. Especially, I love the opening credit scroll when he's on the I don't know what you call it. I guess the horizontal escalator. He's at the airport, and I really quite like that. And yes, the music's very good. I think the acting's really on point. I'd say Dustin Hoffman's character Benjamin Braddock is very relatable. He's being a student as well. There are moments in my life where I don't end up having an affair with an older woman.
I was going to say, if I had a penny for every time, there's MILFs in Maidenhead or whatever.
Yes, but I understand going through times where you're not quite sure what the future holds, and you're confused, and he finds his parents quite irritating, and he's frustrated that they don't entirely understand him and the kind of person he is. I also like the way that it's shot a lot. I think, most old films have, kind of long takes, and especially towards the beginning of the film, there's the scene at the party when he's walking around and he's meeting all of his parents' friends, and he seems very kind of distant from everyone and isolated and not really very conversational. And I quite like the part where he's putting on the diving suit and he jumps into the pool, and the camera kind of pans out a little bit, and he shows him. The film shows him all alone in the water, kind of really sort of disaffected and just away from everyone else. And I just like it. I like the story as well. I like the direction that it goes in quite a lot, because I mean it's one thing to have a film about an affair, but when you add this weird kind of slightly creepy dimension to it of the character falling in love more with the mother's daughter, and then that kind of element of the story goes on as well. It's quite interesting for me. I like it a lot. Yeah, it's the second time I've seen it as well. I saw it once when I was, it was a few years ago now, but I remember liking it a lot and I wanted to go back and revisit, so I thought this would be the perfect moment to pick it again, because I do really like it a lot. What about you guys? I know this is the second time you've seen it, Harry, right?
Yeah, I mean, I saw it because it was released in 1967 initially, and for the 50th...
I thought you meant to say I saw it on it.
Yes, I saw it before my father was born. Yeah, no, so it was released in 1967, so back in 2017, I went to see it in the cinema with my dad, who's a big fan of the film, and I really enjoyed it. And it wasn't one of those like classics like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest where when I saw it I'm like, okay, this is one of my favourite films. But I definitely enjoyed it. And when Ethan picked it again, I was looking forward to watching it again. And then before I watched it, Tony watched it, and it was kind of like, I was like, wait, okay, that kind of raised a red flag. But no, I enjoyed watching it again. What really jumped out for me the second time is just how well directed the whole thing is. I think it's Mike Nichols, who I'm not sure if he won or was nominated for an Oscar for his direction of this film.
Nominated, I'd imagine. Won, I'm not so sure.
But like the way it's constructed, but the direction and the editing is quite impressive. I know the music is a big part of why the film's great, and the sound design. But my big criticism of the music is how often it's repeated, which I think is more of a sign of the times than anything else. So I'm not going to hit the film too hard on that. But like there's a sequence where The Sound of Silence is playing, surprise surprise, in the middle of the film, and it's so well constructed, like such a brilliant montage showing the passage of time throughout the summer of his affair with Mrs. Robinson, balanced with his kind of the mundanity of his home life, and I think that's a really well directed sequence. The kind of the use of sound, like I just touched upon, that is really good. Like when he's the point of view shots and the kind of the sound when he's in that underwater, what do you call it? Underwater suit, diving suit. Yeah, that's really good. And like Ethan said, the opening scene's really well constructed. How like the audio comes in and out depending on like who's kind of going up to Benjamin, who's harassing him. And the one thing, this has become a bit of a hot topic for some reason, but this is on IMDb. I'm just going to say the facts. On IMDb, which is the thing we are using for this podcast, the primary genre listed is drama. I'd say comedy. It hard turns to drama, and I'd say there is more drama than comedy. But this is, for the first half at least, a comedy film. And it's funny, because Dustin Hoffman is good in it. He's very good in it. Not only at the dramatic scenes, but he's so wonderfully awkward. And the way he can like turn every moment into kind of like, can make like just the most simple task, like the extended sequence of the hotel where he's turning every kind of small little thing into like the hardest task imaginable, and just how awkward he is, and like the bizarre interactions he has where he wants to talk to a different guy at the counter, approaches him slowly, the guy ducks down, the same guy he was just talking to. Like there's so many kind of like little subtle kind of visual, and like the bit where he's just going to come out in the diving suit and his dad goes up to the door and you can just hear his kind of like whispered like, I don't want to do that. Like I really like Dustin Hoffman's delivery.
It's the way he moves as well. His acting is very kind of stiff and almost robotic at times. It definitely adds to the awkwardness really well.
I definitely prefer when the film is playing up to his talents, like during the first half. When it starts to become more dramatic, I feel like the film wavers a bit and it's not as interesting. I guess we'll probably get into this more, but looking back on this with like a modern perspective, it's a creepy film. It kind of feels like a comedy version of kind of Taxi Driver, in a weird way. I think.
See, I have likened it to Taxi Driver, but my weird way of not particularly liking Taxi Driver all that much. So.
I really like Taxi Driver, and I do like this. I like it. I think I like it just about as much as I did the first time. I think I've kind of said everything, apart from the fact that this film was not a letdown. Like the Radiohead song. There we go. Getting the cheap one in there first.
Yeah, so I agree with a lot that Harry said. It is some great cinematography and then great music, and definitely I enjoyed the first half with those comedy elements. I'm not I don't really like the second half at all, and sort of the route it takes. I think one of my problems is that I do very early on start relating with the main character Benjamin, and that's all very good. But then stuff that he goes through is just almost, because it is sort of slightly creepy and off-putting for me. I find myself just disliking that I ever related to his character, and it just becomes something unpleasant for me, and not in a sort of nice, challenging way in a film. It just seems a bit off for me. So yeah, sort of, which is sort of what I felt with Taxi Driver as well. Just that there was something off, and it missed the points it was trying to make, and wasn't quite sure whether it was drama or comedy sort of type thing.
I certainly agree with that. I do think the first half of the film is much stronger than the second half, and the second half, I think it's the point where Hoffman goes off to see Elaine at the university, where it starts to feel a bit more baggy, and it's got its pace all wrong, and it feels quite repetitive. He feels like he's just doing the same things over and over again, trying to win her back, and that gets a bit tiring after a while. But I think, I really like the ending, so it kind of gets it back for me.
It doesn't help that the same song is playing like constantly throughout those very similar scenes that really makes it drag. It didn't drag as much the second time, funny enough, when I knew where the film was headed. I think it kind of makes that journey a little bit easier. But with Johnny saying, I don't think it's an accident, and Taxi Driver, it's obviously not an accident, it's a case study of a very troubled man, and men in general. Whereas this, I feel like they kind of play up the kind of the creepy and weird nature of Ben as the film goes on, to ridiculous kind of comedic effect. Like, it's kind of, I mean, this is kind of still pretty outrageous now, so you can only imagine how outrageous it was in 1967 for a summer comedy. And
by the way, I just checked, Mike Nichols did win the Oscar for Best Director.
There you go. Simon and Garfunkel should have at least, but they're nominated for the music. I mean, they probably
check for you. I imagine
was
so.
was the music made for this? I don't think so, right?
Yes,
I think it was.
Yeah. They were told to make us, I think, 3 songs for it.
So that's
they played them, and the director was like, I don't like those. Have you got anything else going around? And so then that's when they did like Mrs. Robinson and some of the other things.
Yeah. What Sound of Silence was like, is this film so OST? That's pretty neat.
Yeah, so they kind of made
I'm
the music.
surprised the Disturbed was around back then for them to cover this song for this film.
So I just had a look, and unfortunately there weren't any nominations for Simon and Garfunkel, but each of the 3 main characters both won. All 3 of them won Oscars, I think. That's not true. Sorry, they all got nominated for Oscars. So Hoffman and Bancroft, who played Mrs. Robinson, and I think
Catherine Ross.
Catherine Ross, yeah, I think it is. It's
Catherine
Catherine something.
Alright, so just very quickly on the music, obviously, Simon and Garfunkel, the rumour is that they just kind of had this music lying around, which they didn't particularly rate, and kind of shifted it to make it relate to the film. And the way the film uses it is impressive, but that he uses it way too much, especially Scarborough Fair, which is such a meme. Like it's not even like they it's either the song is very repetitive and they pick up where they left off and it sounds the same, or they just keep playing the same bit from the song.
Yeah, I mean, it's because they have Sound of Silence 3 times. They have it at the start, middle, and end, so it's quite nicely, how would you say, like, separated through. But Are You Going to Scarborough Fair happens, I think, 3, maybe even 4 times.
Very close together.
Very close together, yeah, around the same bit, because it's around when he's going up to the uni, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
To the point where I wasn't sure if they were just having like an extended version of the song that was just had bits where the song wasn't playing over like 20 minutes, you know. And I think it's a bit I don't know, Thor Ragnarok came out and they used Immigrant Song twice, and people were like, oh, he's really squeezing his money worth out there.
I mean, he literally admits it as well.
Yeah,
like, I paid so much for that song, I want to
and
use
this is like, I guess we'll use each song like 5 times. It was the kind of thing where, I don't know, it just helped the film feel really like repetitive and dull to me, to just rely on the same song so many times. And I think it is a bit unfair for me to come in and with all my knowledge now of how what's the first song? Fuck my name. Sound of Silence is a massive meme, and it is a bit unfair for me to be coming back from the knowledge of how that film can be used in like a comedic way, because it sounds so depressing and like hollow. The fact that it has been used like now as like a contrast to really comedic things. When I watched it the first time, I was in tears for like the first 5 minutes of the film listening to that song. Like he was on an elevator, like the vertical lift, whatever it's called, and I just didn't care because the song was so funny. And the same thing happened later on, because the first time I had watched it, I had got to 36 minutes in, which unbeknownst to me is right before the song plays for the second time. So I was like, alright, I'll refresh, I'll watch the beginning again. And I just watched to the sound of silence, and then it stopped, and I was like, oh, the film's boring now. I skipped ahead to 36 minutes, and the song started playing again, and I was like... I just couldn't keep it. And I think that experience right there is where the film peaks for me, because I think I see where it was going for. I'm not going to say like, oh, it didn't know what it was trying to be. I feel like the director, like on some level, like accomplished his vision. I just don't think it's something that appeals to me or is very good, because I think it just sort of centers on this character who is like, has this really like a dull sort of life. Like there's a moment that I think sums up my my attitude towards this film, where he says to Mrs. Robertson, like, don't think I'm doing this out of anything other than sheer boredom, and like that's the only situation I could imagine myself like willingly watching this film, because it just has this like directionless character who it just feels so like bland, and like other than like his awkwardness, which is played up to the point where it feels more secondhand cringe than it is funny, and I'll get into the comedy more where I don't like it, and I think it's not a very good comedy film later on. But for me, just having that unlikable sort of main character, although I will concede, aimless, sort of a bit of a weirdo. Those are relatable traits, and I'll admit that, but that doesn't make him sympathetic, and that doesn't make him likable. And so when the film takes like, I want to say 40 minutes to get to the central like arc of the film, which is the fact that he falls in love with Elaine, it just drags so much, and at that point the film just had failed to grab me in any way, and so the rest of the film felt like such a slog to get through because of that. And I will take a pause to see if you have any comments.
Yeah, but you need that build up, the whole relationship that he has with Mrs. Robertson to set up, because it's really important, because it sets up the dynamic that he has with Elaine later on.
It's also quite painful to watch, because for me, sorry, Jonno, you were saying something.
I mean, I'm interrupting your point, but it's for me because there's a lot about being with Mrs. Robinson, and then there's so little with Elaine.
Yeah,
that I just don't believe any of the stuff that is there with Elaine.
Like, so many films have a tacked on like romance subplot, and like the film is this romance subplot. It could have fleshed out in any way, but it's just like, oh man, Red Line. They had one shitty romance subplot where all they have in common is they like racing. Why does Elaine like this guy? Like, why? He treats him like shit and takes her to a strip club, and she cries and leaves.
That's a funny scene.
Yeah.
It's just Taxi Driver.
And she starts crying and she leaves, and he's like, oh no, my parents made me do it. I actually have
It is quite funny.
other qualities that you will like for some reason. Okay,
It's not the thing that we like.
I just like to say naked with Elaine. Okay, I've got that out of the way.
What I want to do is just go Elise.
Okay, I just want to defend Dustin Hoffman, because I think Benjamin is not boring, because Dustin Hoffman brings a lot of character to him. He's got a very deadpan delivery.
Yeah,
so
that's my problem with
yeah,
him.
I can see why you could kind of consider it as like boring, as him as a boring character, but I find him a lot of fun. Apart from when he becomes creepy towards the end. Also, we haven't really talked. We will get to the end because it's one of the best final shots in the film.
I can talk about that.
Okay, Ethan, do you want to talk about that now, or should we let Tony?
All right. Well,
keep
to
shitting
me,
on the film?
yeah, because I just want to shit on this film quite a lot. The film with the comedy is just the fact that everything is played. It relies on this sort of awkward humor sort of thing, but every, I think, attempt at a joke in this film is just played so deadpan and played so like straight, and like to the point where I just like I'm just like confused as to if it was even trying to be funny at any point, because there's so many things where I was like, oh, is it gonna happen? The film's gonna gonna be a comedy. It's gonna tell a joke, and it's like it has the thing where it cuts to him like in the diving suit, and it's like, all right, come on, man in a diving suit. Surely there's got to be something you can do with this, and it just plays the scene so straight of like, yeah, he just goes underwater, and then it leans into the fact that the whole thing is like quite depressing and that he's aimless, which I feel that I suppose you could do it if you were like more competently a comedy writer at like balancing the sort of contrast between his directions and like sort of like, I don't know, mindlessness against his
Horseman.
I was gonna say that has like that always keeps up with the jokes though, and like even though he's insufferable, like you at least like get the upside of that, of he like has like an energy about him, like he always like takes the piss out of certain scenes. He always like, he's an asshole, but he's also aggressive, and it also like, you know, keeps like the energy of like when he's mad at something, you know, it'll be like a funny back and forth. This is just such like a straight like, oh, are you still a bourbon man? It's like, no, I'll have scotch, and he pours in bourbon. And like the way the jokes are like built up and played outwards, they have no impact after they're said, that it's always such like a constant deadpan that you feel like your heart is flatlining, you know, it's flatliners. It's like there's no energy.
Remake or original? Disturbed or Simon and Garfunkel?
It's just that there's no build up of tension or release in any of the comedy scenes. They always just fall so flat.
Tell me, did you not find it funny when he goes back to the hotel with Elaine and everyone's calling him names that aren't his?
Like,
and there's an old lady who comes past and calls him something completely different.
It's the kind of thing where I could see where it is humorous, the fact that he is socially awkward in so situations, but it's played so realistically and so deadpanly that I'm just feeling more of the second-hand like cringe factor than any of the comedy of the scene. You know,
I get why you wouldn't like the comedy and why, but like you can't deny that the comedy is there.
Well, I mean, alright, the comedy is there for some people, but for me the film was very, very dry and boring to watch through.
If the comedy doesn't appeal to him, then he has every right to say that there's no comedy.
Yeah, but I mean, it is there.
Okay, alright.
It's just of a specific, and I feel like a lot of like comedy is, as with every art form, has evolved and changed. And like I think the way this film shows its age is through its use of the music, how it keeps repeating it. But I guess the comedy is probably quite dated. What you find?
Yeah, and I wasn't alive in 1967. You know,
like you, Harry.
Yeah, I'm like you.
I
day one saw this. A midnight released it. You know.
I can't imagine a context and then play that context in my mind as I watch this film. To me, I just watch this and like, you know, I'll watch a 5-minute YouTube video and it will have me laughing from beginning to end. And I'm not saying that everything needs to have like an immediate like fast-paced comedy. I think, you know, having more slown out and drawn like build-up scenes can work, you know, but it just played so flatly and so like boringly that I can't like
you'd need like a really big joke at the end.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like I thought I came up with something earlier that I forgot, but it's like it's played so straight that you want it to like call itself out at some point, but it just is this like monotone throughout the entire
bring
thing.
up like BoJack Horseman again, the free churro episode.
Yeah, but that's a terrible joke at the end.
Yeah, but it's still like.
Wait, what's the joke at the end? I don't remember anything about that.
Oh, I'm not going to say.
Yeah, I won't spoil it. I mean, it's a fantastic episode of a TV show, an animated TV show, which I don't think is got anything to do with The Graduate. Can we talk about the end? Complete.
Oh yeah, the ending.
Well, I mean, before we talk about the ending, I want to talk about another one of my favourite moments in the film, which is the section where they're able to communicate a message so clearly and so well without any dialogue, and it's the point where Hoffman goes back to the house after he's just driven off with Mrs. Robinson, and he goes to find Elaine because he wants to tell her about what went between him and Mrs. Robinson before. And he says something like, oh, you know that woman, blah, 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 and then she's like, yes, and then Mrs. Robinson appears in the door frame with her hair all wet, and then she realises it, and I just love that moment because they're able to tell the character what she needs to know without any words, which is what I think makes it so effective and has such an impact. But that doesn't compare to what I like about the ending so much because of how you can watch it, and to me, if you watch it a couple of times, especially Catherine Ross's acting, that there is some sort of really great subtle nuance in how she behaves. So when they're in the back of the bus And the sound of silence starts playing for the third time. There's a part where they're both looking off into the middle distance. Everything seems alright, they've got what they accomplished there together.
Yeah.
But and he seems chuffed and happy, but you look over to her and there's this moment where she looks over him very, very quickly like that, and then looks back off into the distance again, and you can just tell that there's some sort of hesitation, this moment in her where she's not entirely sure if she's made the right decision.
Yeah.
Exactly, and then the film just ends, and I think, look, this is not how I interpret the film, but I think there could be this moment where you realise, oh wait, Dustin Hoffman may actually be the villain of this story, and Catherine Ross realises in the final moments, oh wait, this may not have been the right choice, and
maybe I shouldn't have married someone who I've been on one date with.
It was a great date though, wasn't it?
They had one scene in like a car where he's like, oh, turn your noise down, and then they laugh about something. It's not a believable romance at all.
But the car.
It just takes it assumed for a fact that they
love each other.
love
The date wasn't confined to just them being in the car. There was more to it that you just didn't see behind the scenes. Maybe they made. I mean, they
why
hit it off
didn't
in
we
the car
see
as
that
well.
though? Like the
Why didn't we
growing
get
up
invested
relationship.
at all in
I
this
also want to stress the
relationship?
fact that they weren't meeting for the first time that night. They'd been to school together,
Okay.
so they'd had an entire history. And it is there. You can tell from the way that they interact that they do know each other, and that they do have something that's already been built up. The way that every time he hangs out with Mr. Robinson, he says, "Oh, you should call Elaine. I think you two will work well together," and blah blah blah. I mean, there is this connection that's meant to already be established, even if it hasn't already formed yet. And then it comes together when he treats her badly. Yes, then they seem to hit it off afterwards. And then he opens up to her and has a bit of a Daniel Craig moment where he explains himself, which I'm not a massive fan of, because I think you can tell the kind of character he is without. Actually, no, I do like it because it is, yeah, like I say, he opens up to her and they have this intimate little moment where she understands him a little bit better, and I don't know, I believe it. The problem is you don't believe the romance in House Within Castle either, and that's perfectly believable. You've just got a problem with on-screen romances, Jonathan.
Wait, can I?
It's not. It's just like it shows up for a bit. They like walk along the sky for a bit and then disappear, and then.
Well, at least like she saves
does a few
him, and it's
chores.
Christian Bale. Like, come on, how can you not fall in love with him?
Oh,
And this is just
they-
like, show me any reason why they're good for each other, you know.
That's
in
the
terms
point. That's what I'm like, because they're not.
Alright,
Like, the
fine.
whole idea of trying to kind of like go against, like trying to pick your own path in life. Like the Benjamin character, pretty much from the opening where he's just being he's being transported to home, and then through his own party he's being escorted. There's no one his own age there. His parents are kind of controlling his life. The scene where they're forcing him underwater, when he's kind of manipulating, coerced into this relationship, and then he's not allowed to go out with the daughter, which was his father's wishes. So he's been forced to go on this date by one adult, and then by another adult he's been forced to kind of sabotage the date. And then Elaine's almost in the same pathway, where she's kind of been pressured by her parents to marry this boy that she hardly knows, and it's kind of at the end that's an act of kind of rebellion. I don't think the film is suggesting these two are going to go away and be happy ever after. I think that's the opposite of what that shot's suggesting. It's just in the act of rebellion, maybe they've made a huge mistake. And that's why the final shot. That's what the final shot communicates so well.
I talked about it from like a comedy perspective, and also from the drama perspective. I also think it fails because at the beginning you're just set up with this like directionless, like aimless guy who feels like, I don't know, he's got nothing going on. He doesn't feel like a direction, and it's like, I guess you could make the point that it's like, okay, at the end of the film, he also doesn't have much of a direction, even though he's married Elaine or whatever. He still hasn't really solved the problem. But to me, it just feels like, so like, okay, well that's your problem to deal with, and I don't think having like an aimless character is just like a good drive for a film unless you have some other element that will, like, you know, carry the momentum of the story. But this just doesn't really feel like it has that much drive to it. Like through the entire, you know, last bit of the film, it just felt like, why is this happening? Like, I don't care, you know. And it was just, I'd just been so drained from the experience of watching the film that I just didn't have any empathy for the events that were happening. Like, I could understand that he's like sad, and or maybe they want to be together or whatever. He's like driving, but I just felt so apathetic towards it that I was just so like, I don't know. I didn't like it.
I think saying that he's directionless is doing him a disservice though, because he definitely has motivations.
Yeah.
It's not like he spends the entire film just moping around doing nothing.
He's gonna marry Elaine.
Yeah, he does. He does
The
like.
decision he's made.
Yeah, all right, fair enough.
That's quite a funny scene.
Yeah, it is. I think
funny.
it's a funny film.
Yes.
I don't know.
I think he's funny.
It's that Dave with the shades.
It's just.
It's just so annoying to me. Just that kind of one of the messages seems to be, oh yeah, if you're a guy and the girl says no, just never give up. Follow her to where she moves.
Fuck off. I mean, that's like the message.
Those aren't human beings in the Big Bang Theory. Those are aliens, okay? Those are like robots. No human being is like that, other than like an extreme like sociopath. Yeah, and talking about like aliens and robots, I feel like the idea of how comedy is presented in this film feels like you had to like explain comedy to a robot, who then explained it to an alien, who then explained it to like Russell Howard or someone.
I was hoping that you're just gonna go. And speaking of robots and aliens, the bit where they invaded in the fourth act, The Sound of Silence.
This isn't the second season of Fargo.
And the point with that is just that you can have like a mundane thing and build up energy and like contrast it at some point, but like. I think someone made the comparison to what's the film that Jonno picked a while ago, the Grand Exotic Marigold, Grand Budapest Hotel, right? that film is like, it never like, breaks its own like character. It always like keeps up this like wacky zany attitude, but it plays it straight, like that whole craziness, right?
Yes,
in this it plays the nervousness and like the awkwardness like incredibly straight. But there's no like there's nothing that's that absurd or shocking in it. Like maybe I'm just desensitized. Maybe I'm just like, oh, the guy in Old Boy, sleeps with his daughter. Who cares? But and like I don't find anything that absurd or shocking. But to me, it's just like fairly bland scenes played fairly blandly, and I'm like, there's no real humor in this. I just.
Well, I'm with Tony. I don't think it's like a massively shocking film or anything like that. I don't think it's I don't think the message is anything like that or anything like that at all. You said something a minute ago, Tony, and it was to do with Grand Budapest Hotel and how it keeps up the characters and the personalities of having the wacky zany stuff. And but the thing is in the that's probably quite unfair. But the thing is in The Graduate, the character grows. Right, and he starts off as a character who, like you said, doesn't have direction. And as the film goes on, he realises what he does want out of life, and he just wants to be with Elaine. Right. So as the film goes on, he becomes slightly less awkward, and he does get a bit more confidence because he knows who he wants to be with. So he has like a purpose now.
I do think that like once it picks up in the second half, if I had been more invested in the characters from the beginning, then I would have been like, okay, at least this makes sense. But for me, just like the sort of 3/4 sort of segment in the university just felt very dry. So I was like waiting for the bit for it to grab me, and it never came. So I sort of lost interest in it. But I do like the ending, from like sort of I get that it's like the sort of the gut punch realization that he even though he put all this effort in, he doesn't really get what he wants at the end because life's just a bitch.
But I've remembered other comedy moments when he's trying to like track down the wedding and like calls up and pretends to be the
vicar.
That's
quite
good.
Funny.
You're not
and that song keeps playing again every scene.
The best line, Mrs. Robinson, the most attractive of my parents' friends. Also, this is my final comment to make. It's not even about the film. It's just a bit of trivia. The fact that Dustin Hoffman is 30 years old when he filmed this role. And Anne Bancroft is 35.
Yeah, she's not that much older than him.
She's 35 and he is 30. And they look so different in age.
Yeah,
and it's this weird kind of, like, the fact that everyone is, like, really similar ages. I think the cast is from about 25 to 45. but they're made up to look a lot older and younger. It's a
I
weird
think this was
thing.
Hoffman's first role as well.
His first major role, I think. Yeah.
Oh, was he in things before that? Yeah.
Maybe it is his first role. I know it was his first. It was what made him a star.
Yeah.
I know that much.
Mm.
Like The Godfather made him.
He was in Meet the Parents as well, wasn't he? Or Meet the Fockers? No, Meet the Fockers. He was
Yeah.
definitely in. Yeah. Because Meet the Parents is just De Niro, isn't it? And
Is he still his dad then?
Oh no. Yes, Hoffman is still his dad for
Yeah,
sure,
yeah.
and De Niro is his wife's dad, but I can't remember who the actor
That's
is.
that is a really good film.
Yeah, I like it.
All right. And Johnny, got anything else to say?
Not off the top of my head.
Tony,
For me, I would just say that from the beginning, like I just was waiting for it to grab me, and the party scene, you know, it just feels like it felt really like slow and drawn out, and I guess that's, you know, a factor of the times, but you know, it felt like the main character, you know, he didn't have anything that was like wanting me to, you know, root for him in any way, even though you could say that, alright, he's, you know, he's just finished school or whatever, and is at this sort of turning point in his life that doesn't know where to go. Like it didn't feel like it had like any momentum early on, which led to me just hating the film pretty much. And I did try and give it a break, you know, feel like some what am I saying? Just give it a break. Yeah, I watched the first like half an hour and I had to pause it as I was going, because I was like, this film is too boring. I have to like look at my phone for like 5 minutes for every 2 minutes of this film I watch.
I mean, I do remember yeah. I remember we were on some sort of like video call or something with other people, and then you were like, "Oh, you think guess what I've been watching?" I said, "What?" And you said, "The Graduate." And then I said, "Oh, really? How much have you watched?" And you said, "Well, 35 minutes." Why did you pick this film? I was like,
Yeah, because I think that I have been a bit harsh, and I do think there is technical skill in this film in some places. Like, I'll agree, like some of the shots are interesting, but at the same time, some of them just felt really like, I don't know, dated. Like there's one shot where he stopped from the party, right, and he's gone upstairs, and he opens the door and closes it behind him, and he looks dead at the camera, and as he walks towards it for like 5 seconds or like 10 seconds even, and I'm just like, is he gonna just step out of the frame and do like a Deadpool-esque fourth wall break, you know? And and this is gonna be the one like orange filter-esque complaint, which is whenever people take the piss out of me not liking this film, it's the only one they're going to remember, is they overuse the zoom cut, right? They use it like 3 times, and I'm like, oh, I get it, you know? They just like, there's one guy in the background, and they'll zoom in, and it will like transition the scene. I'm like, alright, fine, you know, I don't know.
Also, let me ask you 3 really quickly. Mrs. Robertson, do you really dislike her?
as the film goes on, yeah, but she becomes less. I think you learn more about her in the first half, which is interesting, as she kind of becomes a villain towards the second half. Whereas I think the more conventional thing you do is you set out with like, this person is a villain, and then you start to learn more about them. I like how they reverse that kind of.
It's the same. It's the same thing with him. He spends a big chunk of the first half of the film not knowing what he wants, and then as the film goes on, you realise what his motivations are, and it's like, well, you prefer it when a character sets out to get what he wants from the beginning.
Yeah, I do think that if you don't. That is something that I like, because I want my film to, have like an energy about it. And if you want to have like a directionless character, you need to put them in circumstances where it feels like, the impetus is on them from external factors rather than from themselves having motivation. But this just doesn't feel like it has either.
But I feel like he learns from the mistakes that Mrs. Robinson makes.
Yeah, I guess.
And then
but
that's kind of what propels him to make a bunch of really stupid decisions towards the second half of the film.
Yeah, but like 40 minutes
which ends
in,
him at the end pretty much set to repeat the same mistakes that the generation before did.
Well, I don't know. It felt like too long to pick up any sort of momentum. Like, I guess maybe if Elaine had been introduced earlier, and like there had been more of like a, I don't know, chemistry between them that would be like the arc for the film, I guess. But to me, it's just the scene that really made me like dislike the film, like really like hammered home like how off-putting it was just like how it almost feels like a horror film when he's trying to get away from Miss Robinson. Like he can tell that she's trying to put the moves on him, and like everything feels like a horror film in the sense that like they're doing something that's really obviously like oh, they're going off alone, and you're just shouting at the screen like, don't do that, just leave, and it just doesn't. Like, to me, the turnaround from him, like, really wanting to be out of that situation and to him then calling her up, like, I get that he's bored, but I'm bored watching the film, you know, that's not a compelling emotion. And also, there's another tiny complaint. I hate that, this is something that I've noticed, that actors, it's really hard for them to lie as another character. Like, lie in character, if that makes sense. Because the way she acts is like, I'm not trying to seduce you, you know? And she's, even after doing like all those obvious things, it's played like too straight. You can't tell.
I mean, yeah, but secretly she wants him to figure out that that's exactly what she's doing.
Yeah, I know. Which is
not trying to like.
Yeah, I know. Which is why, like, why is she so like straight? Like if she wasn't trying to do it, like almost taken aback by it in like a really
that's what
hard.
Makes the film interesting. Would you rather that the film started off with her just saying, "Hey, you young man, I want to fuck you"?
That would have had. No, Ethan.
No, that wouldn't have been interesting.
That would have had to. That would have been interesting though. But to be fair, I remembered the joke that I had came up with for this film is if the scene when she walks in naked to Elaine's room and is like naked there and like waiting for his reaction, he's like, Miss Robinson, you're trying to seduce me, aren't you? Just naked in the room with him. It's like, why do you think that? That would have been the absurd like contrast which this film needs. It needs like a moment of like it just feels like too slow, and it needs like something that will just make it worth it, because like I'll say this film feels slow. Like it works when it has like the long drawn up build up or like the callback jokes, and there's the one joke that I like in this film. There are a couple that I like, to be fair, just not that many, where it's like he's talking to Mrs. Robinson like really early in the film, and it says like, how was Elaine, you know, conceived, and he's like, in a car. And later on he's doing the he's really annoying in like the university section because he just feels so repetitive, and it's like, oh, is this really what it's ending on? But there's a good moment where he's like, where did he propose? It wasn't in a car, was it? And I'm like, that's good, you know, when it has the build up of tension like early on, like a little set piece, you know, oh, remember this, and then it comes and it pays off later on, sorry. It feels like, okay, it's worth it, you know, I understand, like that's what comedy is, you know. But this just feels too plain. It feels like the main character, the one thing I will say is my resounding point, he feels like a sort of what's his name? David Schwimmer in Friends. Ross. He feels like Ross if you took away
Catherine Ross.
No. He feels like Ross if you took away all the funny aspects of him. He just is awkward.
Yeah, that's called Ross without the laugh track.
No, Ross has like a even though he is awkward, he always, you know, he plays up jokes, you know, he carries like an energy in scenes, like he's mad, you know, sometimes he feels like more entertaining, and this just he's just awkward. He's just like
that's true, and you'll probably disagree with me on this, but I mean, don't you think that all the characters in Friends are maybe not stereotypes, but I don't think they're in any way realistic, because they're coming out with gags left and right.
Yeah,
whereas
I think they are very funny characters in Friends, which is something you sort of have to do in a comedy sometimes, if that's what you're going for, is to just have funny characters. But this doesn't really have very funny characters. It has the one guy whose gag is that he is awkward in scenes, and that just feels awkward to watch. It's never played up to be funny.
I just want to say, when you say things like that, could you look at Harry? Because I think it's it's got funny moments. I think it's a drama more than anything. He's the one who thinks it's laugh out loud. It might have been
a thing of hearing Harry say it's a dark comedy and being like, okay, I'm waiting for the joke, and it took me like an hour and 56 minutes to find the joke, other than when I laughed at Sound of Silence.
It's more that Ethan had seen the film and not realised it was a comedy, and I was like, oh, okay, because like the one thing that stood out for me watching it was like, oh, okay, that's it. I mean, it's the comedic elements are quite big. I mean, I don't pretend to understand your taste, Tony, so I'm not going to tell you. So,
the film has scenes. It has a villain.
I do feel like Miss Robinson is a fleshed out character. It's just that when people feel like so like miserable and so like dejected and like aimless in their lives, it's just like it just doesn't have like a sort of sympathy, like a likable like core to it in any way. Like it's just kind of depressing and awkward, and I don't want to watch it. It's boring. Anyway.
Hang on, before we summarise, the reason I asked if you guys like Mrs. Robinson was because you specifically, Harry, I think, said you disliked her more as the film went on, right? Could you imagine if that entire film had been reversed so that it was an older man trying to trap a younger lady into a relationship doing the same things that Mrs. Robinson had done? You'd hate him from the onset, wouldn't you?
yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of where the twisted comedy of it is. I mean, I don't say it's aged well. I think a lot of Johnny's kind of criticisms are valid of a kind of predatory relationship.
It is consensual. It's just not very nice. It's just kind of like, they're kind of just doing a shitty thing because they're bored. I don't really care, you know.
Yeah.
We're gonna slap a number on this
Yeah,
bad
I'm
boy now.
bored of Tony saying it's boring at this point. So.
I was bored of feeling that like 20 minutes into the film. So
Alright.
you know.
Let's stop talking.
I'll set the bar. So, being the person who'll definitely give this film the highest score, well, as you already know, I really, really like it. I think the acting is on point. I think it's very well shot. I didn't even mention the fact that there's that fantastic shot of that. It's like raining outside. You see a house on fire in the distance. Now I'm talking about the moment where he says, "Oh, Mrs. Robinson, you're trying to seduce me, aren't you?" And her leg is kind of like in the centre of the frame, sort of arched, and I like that very much. I think that's clever.
It's an iconic shot.
It's a very iconic shot.
Iconic shot of not her leg.
It's actually Quentin Tarantino's leg.
No, it's his feet. Uma Thurman's leg.
I thought before I watched this film again with Jonathan, I might give it a 10, but I don't think I liked it as much, so it'll be a really high 9. But I do like this film a lot, more than most. So yeah.
Okay. I'm probably next.
So yeah, we should probably go in descending order.
Yeah, I mean, I'm nowhere near a 9. I'm probably like I give it an 8. It's a low 8. I think it's definitely I understand why it's considered a classic. I understand why it's so beloved. I too appreciate some of the great things about it. I think it's slightly problematic in places. I think some of the film hasn't aged well, but for the most part it holds up. It's pretty good. It's pretty great.
And I think I think what it is I feel very similar to you, but then there's the -1 because it's Johnny, and then there's another -1 because I don't know, I feel it's more of a problem it not having aged as well, and those sort of awkward moments for me make me dislike it more than I think it does for you. So it's a 6 from me. Not because I was doing like a minus thing from your score, just that's what I'd give it, and that's why I think we have similar opinions but quite different scores.
Is that high?
See that, Tony?
Let me do some quick
It's
maths.
not 3 10s.
It is a high 6. It could it could be a 7. It could, even on a very good day, I could see myself giving it an 8.
Because you're a high 6, I'm a low 8, so I think we're kind of between us we're a 7.
I think I was gonna score it depending on how well other people did. So because I voiced complaints about how the scoring system in this show works, but I don't want to gimp Ethan for the entire competition. And being exposed to things that are bad can help refine your tastes and your ability to critique things. So there is value in it. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10 so that it gets the exact score arrangement that Redline did. To the same total as well, if I'm correct.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
the same total.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't give Redline a 9 and you
Wait,
a
is
5.
it 5, 6,
No, it was
8, 9,
Ah,
5,
just
6,
take it
8,
back.
9, right?
Should we finish the podcast
Yeah.
before Tony changes his mind?
Please.
Well,
Actually, Ethan, it's round 3 next, and you're going next.
Am I straight away?
Yeah.
Is it Boys in the Hood or Children of Men first?
Well, which one? Pick.
It's you to pick.
I'll leave Children of Men last. I'll leave children at men last. So it's Boys in the Hood next. It's a I really like this film. It's a film set, I think, in
Tony's already there going.
No,
5 out of 10.
I'm like, because
Oh.
Ethan, when I agree with him, he like has a good taste.
We're actually gonna. We're actually gonna watch this one together as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Back
So-
to the old format where Tony can't watch the film every 2 minutes.
Yeah. So Boys in the Hood briefly
I'd
is
not give it a 5 out of 10 if I had to watch it consistently and without speeding it up at the end.
It centres on a group of friends in the late 80s, set in Compton, Los Angeles, and how they kind of deal with living in a poverty-stricken neighbourhood full of violence and drug abuse. It's a good film, really like it.